How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Mem Gimel, Daf 43 of Masechta BavaKama. Friends, yo friends, friends. I really wanted today to make it to the Mishnah on Daf Mem Daled. Man, I'm doubtful we're going to get there. And for two reasons. First of all, Shabbos is coming pretty soon, and I think that in order to get there, we'd probably need more time than we have. And secondly, the last chunk of the daf isn't so hard, but I also ran out of time to review it. So I've learned it and I've quickly gone over it, but I didn't review it as well as I usually do. So for that reason, I have a feeling we're not going to get to the last chunk, even though I really wanted to. But alright, I guess we'll have to do it tomorrow. Okay. But honestly, that part isn't so hard. The hard part is up until there, really. I think that it's not like an extremely difficult daf. I do have a feeling it's going to be slow. So, here we go. We're going to start in Daf Mem Beis, Amud Beis. We got some work to do over there. About 10 lines from the bottom or so, about 5 lines before it gets wide, at the 2 dots, Taner Rabbanon, the rabbis taught. Vehemis ish o isha. This pasuk is in the context of a shor mu'ad. And it says that the shor mu'ad, if it kills a man or a woman, Omar Rab Akiva, says Rab Akiva v'chimaba zel lamdenu. What is this teaching us when it says vehemis ish o isha? What's it teaching us? Im l'chayv al isha ki ish harikvar nemar ki igach shor es isha. So it can't be teaching us to say that the halachos of an ox goring are both by a man and a woman, apply both to men and women, because it said it in the previous pasuk, right? In the pasuk right before that, it says "Shigashor es isha." So that part, and that's by a short tam, but it's mamish the pasuk right before. It's talking about ish o isha, to say that that it applies both to men and women. So why in the very next pasuk does it Nochamal have to say Vehemis ish o isha? So el lahakish isha leish, rather it's to compare a woman to a man. Ma'ish nizakav liyorshav af isha nizakeh liyorsheho. So just like when it comes to a man, his damage payments would go to his heirs. So also by a woman, her damage payments would go to her heirs. So meaning, if a fellow gets damaged and before he has an opportunity to collect the damages, he finds himself in Wellwood. So the heirs collect the damage payments. Now, if it's a woman who finds herself in a similar predicament, so her heirs would receive the damage payments. It would not go to her husband. Her husband would not inherit these payments. Her heirs would inherit these payments. But one second. So how come? How come Rabbi Akiva is saying this? I mean, normally a husband would inherit his wife if she dies. So then why is that not the case here? Why is the damage payments going to the kids, not to the husband? Right, to the heirs, not to the husband. So where am I? But we learn in a brayse of Yarash also Mikansha Bal Yarashas Ishto de Rabbi Akiva. Ho. We have a brayse in which Rabbi Akiva himself says that when the pasuk says in the context of inheritance, V'yarash also, right? Yeah. So Mikansha Bal Yarashas Ishto. So Rabbi Akiva says that a husband inherits his wife. So why does he not inherit the damage payments? Omer Rish Lakish says, Rish Lakish, Lo Omer Rabbi Akiva Ella B'kofer. B'kofer. This is only referring to kofer payments, right? So if the woman was gored to death by a shor muad, and therefore there's kofer, that kofer payment does not go to the husband, that goes to the children. Ho'il ve'en mishtalim el lachar misa. Because since the kofer payment is only paid after she's already dead, she's no longer married to her husband, she's dead now. So v'havale ra'ui, so therefore the kofer payment is considered like something that is potential payment and not muhzak, not like money that already exists at the time of her death that she already had. So ve'im bal nota b'roi ki b'muchsa. And a husband does not inherit his wife with regard to potential payments that she was owed. He only inherits things that she has at the time that she dies, and therefore this kofar payment is considered like a potential payment because it's a payment that only comes after she's already dead. Therefore, it does not go to the husband; it goes to the heirs. My timer. Why do we consider the kofar payment to be considered only after death? Like meaning, what if she got gored? If I understand correctly, then what if she got gored and she's like, things are looking mamish bad. She's still breathing. She's not dead, but it's not looking good. Maybe at that point already, there's a kofar. Maybe the kofar payment is ready from that time, not only once she's dead, right? So, Amar Kra, the pasuk says, "Vehemis ish o isha," that the ox kills the person, so the person is dead. Hasho yisakav gam balav yumasim kofar yushas olav. That only once the victim is dead, only at that point is the shor chayiv skila, is there a kofar payment. It's only after death, and therefore that is why the kofar payment would go to the heirs and not to the husband. Uvnizakin lo, Amar Rabbi Akiva. Now 1 second. So really, is it really like Rish Lakish is saying that when Rabbi Akiva says that the Nizakov go to her heirs, that's specifically kofar payments, but not damage payments? If she got hurt, if she got damaged, and then she died, and now we're paying the damages, that would go to the husband, that would not go to the heirs. But we learn in about if somebody hit a pregnant woman and she miscarried, no say nezek v'tzar leisha v'tmevlodus lebal. So the nezek, the damage to the value of the damage that she incurred, and the pain that goes to her. But the value of the miscarried fetus goes to her, goes to the husband, right? As the pasuk says, right? Do we have this? Yeah, it says kasher yoshis olav baal or isha v'nosim beflilim. So the pasuk says that the payment for the miscarriage goes to the husband, not to her, but the nezek and the tsar goes to her. Ein abal. Now, if the husband is dead, nos in the Yoshev, so the Dmei Vladis goes to his heirs. Eino Isha. Now, if the Isha is not alive, nos in the Yoshel, so we give the Nezek and the Tsar to her heirs. So we see that the Nezek payment, that even Nezek payments go to the heirs. Not just Kofar, but Nezek payments also go to the heirs. If she was a shifcha and she was pregnant and she was freed and then she died, or giores, or she was a giores who got pregnant from a ger and they both died. So zacha, so the person who caused the damage, caused the miscarriage, well, he doesn't have to pay anybody in these cases because if a ger or giores dies and there's nobody to inherit them, so then their property becomes hefker. So that's this payment, who would it go to? Anybody. It's hefker. So he could just keep it. Okay, fine. So we see that the important point here was that we said that the damage, right, ein ha'isha, nos in the yoshel, that if she is not alive, so then the nezek and the tsar goes to her heirs. So we see that the nezek does go to the heirs, not just kofar. So Amar Rabba begrusha v'chein Amar Rav Nachman begrusha. So Rabba and Rav Nachman both say that we're talking about a grusha, that if she got hurt, right, she miscarried, and then she got divorced, right? So there were these payments, but then she got divorced. So in that case, the payment is not going to go to the husband; it'll go to the heirs because she's divorced. Where am I? So Amar Rabba Begusha v'chen Amar Rav Nachman Begusha Amrei Grusha But if she's divorced, nami tiflog b'dmei vladis. Okay, the Gemara asks, well, if they're divorced, well then maybe the payment for the fetus right? They don't go to her husband. He's not her husband anymore. So maybe they should split the dmei vladis. Her papa says her papa, right? The miscarried, the value of the miscarried fetus. Her papa says her papa atera zochsa dmei vladis lebal, says her papa that the Torah explicitly says that the dmei vladis go to the husband, to the fellow. Afilu ba'aleh biznus, even if a fellow slept with a fellow biznus, right? They weren't married. Still, if there's a miscarriage, the dmei vladis would go to the baal. My time I'll come. Amrikar, the pasuk says, kasher yoshus olav baal ha'isha, that the boel, the person who made her pregnant, would get the payment for the miscarriage in such a scenario, and therefore, even if they're no longer married, or even if they never were married, the dmei vladis would go to the fellow. Frekti Gemara, v'nukma l'rabba kigon shegabu mos, l'Rav Nachman kigon shegabu karka. Damarabba gabu karka yeshlo gabu mos einlo. Rav Nachman Amar gabu mos yeshlo gabu karka einlo. Who could tell me what in the world this is talking about? Any volunteers? This is talking about stuff. He's talking about a situation where a guy is in Wellwood. So now his children are dividing up the estate. So his firstborn son, his Bechor, gets Pishnayim. He gets, a double portion, twice as much as everybody else. Now the thing is, the double portion, he only gets a double portion b'muchzak, not b'ra'ui. Only things that the father had at the time that he died, not things that are considered potential payments. So there's a machlokas between Rabba and Rav Nachman in terms of what's considered ra'ui and what's considered muchzak. Right. We had said earlier that the husband would only inherit his wife for things that she has, not for things that are ra'ui. So, for example, we said that kofar was considered to be ra'ui, and therefore the kids would inherit that and not the husband. So okay, fine. Givaldik. So now, there's a machlokas when it comes to this firstborn collecting his double portion. What's considered things that were in the father's possession versus things that are considered potential, things that are in the father's possession and therefore the firstborn would get the Pishnayim, or things that are considered potential, in which case the firstborn would not get Pishnayim. He would divide like all the other brothers. So now if the father had lent money, and he needs to get paid back. So you're going to pay back the heirs. So now they could get paid back either with money, right? I mean, the father lent $1,000, so they can get paid back either with the $1,000, or if they don't get paid back with money, they can get paid back with the karka, property that was meshubad. So there's a machlokas between Rabbah and Rav Nachman regarding how they get paid back, whether they get paid back with property or whether they get paid back with money, whether the firstborn would get a double portion or not. So v'nukma l'Rabbah k'gon shegav mos v'Rav Nachman k'gon shegabu karka. I'm back in the Gemara. I'm reading that again. To Amar Rabbah, because Rabbah says gabu karka yeshlo, that if the loan is collected with property, so then that would be considered muchzak, right? Because the property was already meshubah to the loan, right? I believe that was why. I'm reading Rashi. The Amar Rabba Gabu Yarshin Karka b'milve Shilva Avim Yeshlo the B'chor Pishnayim Tavle Kimuchzak Dai Karka Ishtabed Le'Lavun. Exactly, because the Karka, this exact Karka that they're collecting was meshubah to this exact loan. So because this is the Karka that was meshubah to the loan, so therefore that's considered muchzak. And if they collect Karka, so then the B'chor would collect his double portion. But Gabu Ma'os. But if they get paid back with money, which this is not the money, of course, milva lo tzanitna, right? The money that they're getting paid back with is not the money that the father gave. So therefore, that's considered ra'ui. Right, let me just make sure I got gabumos pishnaim delav hani mos iniach lena avin v'aviroi. Right, so therefore, it's considered ra'ui. It's considered potential, and therefore, the firstborn would not get pishnaim. And where am I? So gabumos ein lo. For Rav Nachman amar fakir, Rav Nachman says the opposite. Gabumos yesh lo. No, if they collect the money, then he gets his pishnaim, because ultimately, right, that's what they were expecting. The father had lent money. They were expecting to get paid back in money. So if they get paid back in money as expected, so then there would be pishnaim. But gabu karka isn't really what they were meant to collect. That's only, like if they couldn't actually get the money back. So then there's karka, that was meshuba. That's kind of like a kind of side thing. So therefore, I think that's correct, right? Gabu karka ein lo de karka lo iniach avin tavi ra'ui. So right, meaning the father didn't leave this for them. It's only if they couldn't get paid back with money, so then they get karka. So that would be considered ra'ui, and he would not collect from the property from this karka if they were paid back with karka. So we see that Rabbah considers money to be ra'ui. Rav Nachman considers karka to be ra'ui. So why don't we just say, right? So let's go back to the what's it, the sixth line of the Gemara? The sixth line of the Gemara, the beginning of the line. V'nukma l'Rabba, you're going to gabumos. So let's say, why don't we, like, because Rabbah and Rav Nachman had said, what's the scenario, right, where the children would collect the damages if she's divorced? The husband wouldn't collect it; she would collect it if she's divorced. The heirs would collect it if she's divorced. But why not say that according to Rabbah, well, it's talking about where Bezdin collected money, and money is considered ra'ui, and because it's ra'ui, it would not go to the husband, it would go to the heirs. Or according to Rav Nachman, we're talking about a scenario where the court collected property, and property is considered ra'ui, not muhzak, therefore it would not go to the husband, it would go to the heirs. Because Rabbah says gabu karka yeshlo, that in the situation of pishnaim, if they collected karka property, then the firstborn can get his pishnaim gabu mos, but if they collect money ein lo, then the firstborn does not get pishnaim. For Rav Nachman Omar, whereas Rav Nachman says gabu mos yeshlo, if they collect money, then he has pishnaim. Gabu karka ein lo, if they collect property, then he doesn't have the pishnaim because it's considered ra'ui. Amri animid lifnei ma'rov ali b'drabanon ki kamri ocha ki Rebbe. They say, look, the machlokas between Rabbah and Rav Nachman is in a different scenario. That's the problem. The machlokas between Rabbah and Rav Nachman is according to the people in Eretz Yisrael, according to the rabbis. That according to the rabbis, they say that the heirs can only collect from that which is right. If there was, for example, interest on the loan, so I think or appreciation of the loan, so they would not collect that. They'd only collect the base of the loan. So the question is, what's considered potential and what's considered base, and that's the machlokes between Rabbah and Rav Nachman. But over here, we're talking about according to the Rebbe, who says that they can collect whatever is ra'ui or whatever is muhzak, and therefore the machlokes between Rav and Rav Nachman about ra'ui and muhzak is not relevant here, because I was talking about a different case, and therefore both Rav and Rav Nachman say here, however, we're talking about where she was divorced, and because she was divorced, the money would not go to the husband. Reb Shimon ben Lakish says Rish Lakish, Shoshehemis eso'evet shelo b'kavana, an ox that killed an eved shelo b'kavana unintentionally. I don't know, maybe an ox was intending to kill another animal, but then ended up killing an eved. Pater mishloshim shkalim. So the owner of the ox does not need to pay the owner of the eved 30 shekels. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Kesef shloshim shkalim yitein ladonav v'ashor yisakol. That it says when an ox kills an eved that the owner of the ox needs to pay the owner of the eved 30 shekels v'ashor yisakel, and the ox will be stoned. But right, so kolzman she'ashor b'skila abaylim mishalmin shloshim shkalim. Ein ashor b'skila ein abaylim mishalmin shloshim shkalim. That so long as the ox is going to be stoned to death, so then the owner of the ox pays the owner of the eved 30 shekels. But in a scenario such as this, where the ox intended to kill or didn't intend to kill the Eved, and therefore the ox is not chayiv skila, so therefore there would also not be the 30 shekels fine. Omer Rabba, says Rabba, Shor Shem is ben chorin, an ox that kills a ben chorin, shelo b'kavana, without kavana. Okay, so therefore the ox is not going to be stoned, because it was shelo b'kavana, pater mikofer. So the owner of the ox does not need to pay kofar. Does not need to pay kofar for the person who is killed. Shenemar, as the pasuk says, Hasher Yisakov v'gam ba'alav yumos, that you'll stone the Hasher Yisakov v'gam ba'alav yumos im kofar yushasol, right? That you're going to stone the ox, and then there's kofar. So kozman sheshor b'skila, as long as you're going to be stoning the ox, so then by the misham kofar, so then there is kofar. Then the owners pay. The owner of the ox pays kofar to the heirs of the person who was killed. Ein hashor b'skila, but if the ox is not going to be stoned, such as here, where the person was killed unintentionally by the ox, ein ba'alim misham kofar, therefore there's no kofar. So it says Rabbah that if an ox kills unintentionally, so then there is no chiyuv kofar. Eisvei Abaye asks Akasha Hemis Shori es Ploni O Shori Shal Ploni. If a fellow freely admits, he goes and he admits that his ox killed a certain fellow, or the ox of a certain fellow, Hareze Mishalim Al Pi Atzmo. He must pay, even though there was his own admission. So what is this talking about? So what's he paying? So my life kofar. So mistami is paying kofar, meaning even so a fellow who admits that his ox killed somebody does not. So the ox is not going to be killed. If a fellow admits that his ox killed somebody, the ox will not be killed. The ox will not be killed. The ox will not be killed. But nonetheless, apparently he's paying something. What's he paying? So you want to say kofar. So even though the ox is not, right, so that whole limud of only when the ox is stoned do you pay kofar. Well, here the ox is not going to be stoned, and yet there seems to be a payment which we want to assume is kofar. Lo damim. No, it means damim. It means, okay, so we're saying, look, the ox is not going to be stoned because he admitted that his ox killed somebody, so his ox is not going to be stoned. And because his ox is not going to be stoned, there's also not going to be a chiyuv kofar. What's the money that he's paying? The value of the person, meaning if his ox would damage a fellow, the owner of the ox would be responsible to pay for the damages. So here the ox mamish killed somebody. He comes and he admits that his ox killed somebody, so he doesn't pay kofar, and now he's off the hook. I mean, if he just damaged the person, he'd have to pay for all the bills. He'd have to pay for the damages. So then, if this ox mamish killed the person, he should certainly at the very least have to pay for the value of the person that was killed. But if we're talking about the value of the person who was killed, ema seifa. But I'll continue in that brisa. Hey, mishori es avdo. If a person admits that his ox killed an eved, shel ploni, so and so's eved, eino mishalim al piatzmo. He doesn't pay the value, pay the damim. He doesn't pay. Ve'i damim. And if we're talking about the damim, amaylo, why wouldn't he pay the value, right? Meaning, if we're saying that by a ben chorin, in a scenario where he does not have to pay the kofar, he does have to pay the damim. So shouldn't I say that by an eved, if he admits that his ox killed an eved, so therefore he doesn't have to pay the 30 shekels fine? But if we're saying that in a scenario by ben chorin where he doesn't pay kofar, he does pay damim. So let's say that by an eved where he doesn't pay shloshim shkalim, he should pay damim. So if we're saying that this brisa is talking about in the context of damim, the value of the person who was killed, so then how come it's saying that by ben chorin he would pay damim, but by an eved he would not pay damim? So Amarle, so Rabbah answers Abaye, look, Yachilnu l'shanuye loch reisha damim v'seifa knas miu shinuye dechika lo mishanina loch. So Rabbah says, look, I could kind of give you a cop-out answer, a forced answer, and say, look, the reisha is talking about damim. So it's saying that by ben chorin, where he admits that his ox killed a ben chorin, so there would not be a chiyuv kofar, but there would be damim. Now by an eved, if he admits it, there would not be the 30 shekels fine. So Kilu, we could say that the first part is talking about damim, and the second part is talking about the 30 shekels fine. And that's why we say that there's a chiyuv to pay in the Reisha, but in the Sefer there's no chiyuv. Because they're talking about two different things. However, Rabbah says there'll be a shinuri dechika lo mishanin loch. I don't want to give you a cop-out answer. Rather, idam. Rather, both the Reisha and the Sefer, both by the Eved and by the Ben Chorin, we're talking about damim. So the question is, why when he admits that his ox killed a Ben Chorin, does he pay the damim? And yet when he admits that his ox kills an Eved, he does not pay the damim. The reason is because miu Ben Chorin, when it comes to Ben Chorin, the Mishalem Kofer al pi atzmo, by Ben Chorin, there are scenarios where he would pay Kofer al pi atzmo. Vechidami, what's the scenario where he would pay Kofer al pi atzmo? The Iasu Saide ve'asidube, that if witnesses come and they testify, the kotol, that his ox killed a Ben Chorin, a free fellow, V'lo itam hava imur hava, but what they don't know is if his ox is a tam or a mud. V'omer mare, and the owner of the ox says, the muadu, my shore is a shore mud. The mishalim kofer al pi atzmo, even though it's his own, he's offering this information on his own, he's admitting it, still he needs to pay kofer in that scenario. So heicha deleka edim mishalim damim. So where there are no witnesses and he freely admits that his ox killed a Ben Chorin, so there would not be kofer, but there would be damim. You would pay the value of the person who was killed. Now, gabi eved, but that's not the case by an eved. There is never a scenario by an eved where the owner of the ox admits that his eved, that his ox killed an eved, and he would still have to pay the 30 shekels fine, right? Gabi damim, gabi eved, she'eno, where am I? Mishalim damim, gabi eved, she'eno mishalim knas al piatzma, that he will never have to pay a knas al piatzma. Ve'echi damim, in what scenario? De'i also, that if in the same exact scenario, the also edim vasidube, the kotal, that witnesses came and testified that his ox killed an eved. V'lo yadei itam hava imur hava. They don't know if his eved is a short time or shormud. V'amar mari, and the owner of the ox says mud, who it's a shormud. Lo mishtalim knas al pi atzmo. He does not pay the 30 shekels fine. Echa deleka edim lo mishalim damim. So when there are no witnesses, and he says, my ox killed an eved, he would not pay damim. So that's the difference, says Rabbah. So the whole brisa is talking about damim, the value of the person who was killed. The difference between a Ben Chorin and an eved is that since by Ben Chorin there is a scenario where even al pi atzmo he would pay kofer, so therefore and that's when there are witnesses, whatever, and they don't know if it's a tam wood. So when there are no witnesses and he admits it, so he won't pay kofer, but he will pay damim. By a eved, where he will never pay the 30 shekels fine al pi atzmo, even if there are witnesses and they need to know about the muad and he admits it, he would not pay the fine. So therefore, when there are no witnesses and he admits it, he would also not pay the damim. Masiv Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak, Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak asked a question from the following brisa called Shechayev be Ben Chorin, Chayev be Eved, that anything that you're chayiv by a Ben Chorin, you're also chayiv by an Eved. Bein bekofer, bein b'misa, whether with regard to kofer payments or whether with regard to, I guess the ox having to be killed. Now, kofer be'eved mi'ika, I don't know, what do you mean that everything you're chayiv for by a Ben Chorin, you're chayiv by an Eved, such as kofer. Kofer is only by a Ben Chorin, it's not by an Eved. Elo lav damim. So rather, we want to say that no, it's not referring to kofer, it's referring to damim, meaning that there is no difference between an Eved and a Ben Chorin with regard to damim payments. So that's the kasha on Rabbah, because Rabbah is saying that there is a difference, right? When a fellow admits that that his ox killed somebody, So there's a difference. So Rabbi wants to say, if it's a ben chorin, there is damim. If it's an eved, there's no damim. But here we have a brisa that seems to be saying, or we want to argue that it's saying, that there's no difference between an eved and a ben chorin when it comes to damim. To those who say, who most of love, who mefarikla. To those who say that Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak asked the kasha and then he answered his own kasha. He's the Amr to those who say, Amarle Rabba, that Rabba responded to Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Hachi katani, this is how you have to understand the brisa. Kol shechayav b'ben chorin. Whenever you'd be chayav by ben chorin, b'kavana, if the ox killed this ben chorin intentionally, al pi edim, and there were witnesses, kofer, so if it's a shamur, it'd be chayav kofer, chayav be'eved knas. So in that same scenario, right, that his ox intentionally killed an eved and there are witnesses, so of course he's going to be chayav to pay the 30 shekel fine. V'chol shechayav b'ben chorin shelo b'kavana, and whenever by ben chorin you're chayav when it was shelo b'kavana, without kavana, al pi edim, and there were witnesses, domim, so you'd be chayav dom, you won't be chayav kofer, because it was shelo b'kavana, but you will be chayav domim, chayav be'eved, shelo b'kavana, al pi edim domim. So the same thing would apply there also by an eved. If there were two witnesses, the witnesses came and testified that somebody's ox killed an eved, shelo b'kavana, so there would be domim in that case. And that's what it means, that there's no difference when it comes to domim in that scenario. However, in the scenario where a person admits that his eved, right, there are no witnesses, but he admits that his eved, that his ox killed either a ben chorin or an eved, there is a difference that by ben chorin there would be domim, but not by an eved. Omerle Ravis. Now Ravis says to Rabba, Ihachi, if this is the case that we're saying that if is Ihachi isho shelo b'kavana al pi edim nishalim dam. Right? If we're saying that if there are witnesses who came to testify that his ox killed a person shelo b'kavana, so he pays damim, he pays the value. So we should say the same thing by Eish, right? If you assume that Isho Mishum Mamono, that your fire that kills somebody is the same thing as your ox that kills somebody, and we're saying that by your ox, if there are two witnesses who say that your ox killed Shelo B'Kavana, you have to pay the value of the person, the damim of the person who was killed, even though there's no kofar. So let's say the same thing, right? And also the same thing would apply to an eved. So let's say the same thing by a fire. If a person makes a fire and the fire kills a person, shelo b'kavana, and there are witnesses, you should be chayiv damim. So, uminole the Rava delo mishalim. Okay, fine. Now, why is Rava assuming that by a fire there would not be damim? Right? It sounds like he's asking a kasha to Rava. Based on your logic, the same thing should apply to fire, but it seems like Rava is assuming that it's untrue. Why does he assume that by fire there would not be the damim? So, ilema midatnan. If you're going to say, well, because of the mission that we've learned before, if you have a pile and a goat was tied to the pile, the eved samachlo, and an eved was close to the pile but not attached to it in any way, v'nisrafimo, and the pile got burned along with the eved and the gedi, chayiv is going to be chayiv to pay for the pile and for the goat, because the eved could have run away. So he's patur for the eved, but he's going to be chayiv for the gedi and the goat because of the damage that was caused. Eved kaf was slow. If the eved was tied, was connected to this pile, the gedi samachlo, and the gedi was close by, v'nisraf imo, and he was and they all got burnt. Patur, he's patur. So it sounds. So we want to suggest that perhaps what this means, or perhaps Rav is assuming from here that he's patur from damim, right? The eved was killed by this fire, and he's saying patur. He's patur from paying anything, including damim. But v'amar Rish Lakish who gon she'etzes begufo shel eved to come b'derab minei. But Rish Lakish says that this is a different scenario. He explains this scenario where he specifically torched the eved on fire. That's a situation where he's going to be going to be chayiv misa for that, and because he's chayiv misa, he's going to be chayiv, he himself, he killed the guy, he's going to be chayiv misa, because he's chayiv misa, he's potter from paying. When he says potter, it means potter from paying for the pile and for the goat. Well, the goat could have run away, but he's potter from paying for the pile because Kama b'derab meaning. So this has nothing to do with damim. Ve'ela me'od Tanya, rather maybe from the following brisa, chomer ba'esh mi babor, that there's a chumrah, that fire is more chumrah than a pit. Sha'esh mu'edes lechol bein davar roila, bein davar shein roila, that a fire is more stringent in that it is muad to consume anything, whether it's something that's fit for it or not. Masha'en came babor, which is not the case by a boar, that only only an animal, he's potter for adam v'kelim. Ve'ilu sha'esh mishalemes shelo b'kavana damim, masha'en came babor lo katani, but it does not point out that an additional stringency by Aish over Bor is that in Aish you would pay Damim if it kills Shelo B'Kavan. It does not mention that, implying that it is not a thing. Dilmatan of V'Shire. Well, maybe it is a thing, and it was just left out. Okay, so again, so why is Rava assuming that by fire there is no Damim? No, so we say no. Rava actually wasn't making an argument. It wasn't saying that by Aish there is no damim. He was asking Pashit, Isho shelo b'kavana mi mishalim damim olo, that if a fire kills shelo b'kavana, is there damim or not? Right, that's what he wants to know. Mi amina, do we say, look, gabe shor, who, that specifically by an ox, the b'kavana mishalim kofer, that if that if it kills intentionally, then there's a chiyuv kofer. Shelo b'kavana mishalim damim. Well, then if it was not with kavana, if it was without kavana, and therefore there's no chiyuv kofer, well then at least you pay damim. Aval isha de b'kavana lo mishalim kofer. But eish, where even b'kavana there's no kofer, shelo b'kavana nami lo mishalim damim. So then also since there's never any kofer, well then even when it was shelo b'kavana there will not be damim. Or Dilmor, perhaps, given the gabe shoro shelo b'kavana, or maybe when it comes to shor shelo b'kavana, afal gav de leka kofer mishalim damim, even though there's no kofer, he still pays damim. So gabe isho nami, so say the same thing by fire. Afal gav de kavana lo mishalim kofer, even though there's no chiyuv kofer shelo b'kavana meaning that that when it comes to Eish, there's never going to be a chiyuv kofer. Shelo b'kavana miyas mishalim damim. We'll say that shelo b'kavana there is damim, but they didn't take it. We don't know. Right? So okay, fine. We don't know the answer to that kasha about if by Eish there's going to be damim or not. Kiyosur Rav Dimi Amar Rav Yochanan. So when Rav Dimi came, he says, "Name Rav Yochanan kofer matam lomer im kofer l'rabos kofer shelo b'kavana." So Rabbi Yochanan Taka argues on Rabbah. Rabbah had said that if an ox kills shelo b'kavana, so then there's no kofer. If an ox kills shelo b'kavana, then there's no kofer. But ki also Rav Dimi, I'm reading that again, when Rav Dimi came, Rabbi Yochanan says, name Rabbi Yochanan kofer, that that the pasuk could have said kofer matam lomer im kofer. Why does it say im kofer yushasalav? What's the im? The rabbos, it comes to include kofer shelo b'kavana. It comes to include kofer even when the ox killed shelo b'kavana. There's still kofer b'kavana in the same way that there would be kofer even if it was with kavana. Amar le Abaye says to Rav Dimi, El Me'ata, if that's the case, Eved Nami, say the same thing by an Eved. Matam lomer im Eved. Why does it say im Eved? The Rabbos Eved, shlo b'kavana, keved b'kavana. So I will say that by an Eved also, if the ox kills shelo b'kavana, there should still be the 30 shekels payment. V'chitema achi nami. And if you're going to say, yeah, sure, Rabbi Yochanan would say that also by Eved, if it kills shelo b'kavana, there's a 30 shekels payment. Ve'amar Rish Lakish, where Rish Lakish says, Shorsha eim is eso Eved, shelo b'kavana, that if an ox kills an Eved shelo b'kavana, pater mishloshim shkalim. There's no chiyuv shloshim shkalim. Amar legavra agava karamis, to which Rav Dimi says, you're asking a kasha on Rabbi Yochanan from Rish Lakish. They're chavrusas, they argue with each other. What's the big deal? And Kiyasa Ravin, when Ravin came, Amr B'Yochanan, he said explicitly in the name of B'Yochanan, Eved, Matam Lomar Im Eved. Why does it say Im Eved? L'Rabos Eved Shelo B'Kavana, Keved B'Kavana. To say just that if an ox kills an Eved Shelo B'Kavana, there's still going to be the 30 shekels fine. Ul'Reish Lakish Nami Neimami the Eved Im Eved Lo Darsh. So now let's suggest that according to Reish Lakish, so if he does not learn out Im Eved to say Shelo B'Kavana is chayav the 30 shekels, rather he says Shelo B'Kavana is parted from 30 shekels, so then Kofer Im Kofer Nami Lo Darish. So let's also say that when it comes to Kofer, if an ox kills a Ben Chorin Shelo B'Kavana, let's say that there's no Kofer. Amrei Lo. They say no. Eved Im Eved Lo Darish. Rish Lakish does not learn Eved Im Eved with regard to the 30 shekels payment. I.e., if an ox kills Shelo B'Kavana, there would be no 30 shekels payment. Kofer Im Kofer Darish, but he says that if an ox kills a Ben Chorin Shelo B'Kavana, there would be Kofer. Umayshna, what's the difference? Eved Im Eved Lo Ksiv Makom Tashlumin, Kofer Im Kofer Ksiv Makom Tashlumin. That right? It's when it says where is it? Im Eved Yigach Hashor Ama. It's not talking about money. It's just talking about if the Eved gores the if the ox gores an Eved, so it's talking about the ox goring, so therefore it's not coming to include the payment of 30 shekels. But when it comes to the Im Kofer, that's specifically talking about a Kofer payment. It's talking about payments, and therefore it's going to include that there still would be Kofer when it comes to an ox that kills a Ben Chorin Shelo B'Kavana. Friends, I think I have to hold it here, unfortunately. Because because Shabbos is coming, I think I should really hold it here, which means we have to pick up from here tomorrow. But Etzem, we learned a few big sugyas today. The first part talked about the that when it says Ish and Isha, so it says that by Nizakin, the payment would go to her heirs and not to her husband. We discussed in which scenario that would be. Then we saw a machlokes be'etzim between Rabbah and Rabbi Yochanan, also Rish Lakish, about if an ox kills Shelo B'Kavana, is there kofer or not? Rabbah says that there would not be kofer, whereas Rabbi Yochanan and Rish Lakish say that the be'etzim would be kofer in that case. Friends, that was Daf Mem Beis, Masechta BavaKama. Hope you enjoy. Peace out.